Guy, where you been, man? I've been waiting around here for you, and this is, this is an important part of my day, man. I miss my pal. Where you been?
Look, I apologize. I was sent out to get rolls and something called a brine bag. And I got to tell you something, without using the vernacular, I'm walking through the effing Wegmans trying to track down brine bags. And of course, they have them in like a 6 square foot aisle that it's hidden from most. Dude. I found, of course, then when you find the brine bags, you can get the brine bags by themselves. You can get the brine bags with the brine.
You got to be careful about
decisions like that. It's a effing disaster.
Look, I'm sorry, getting out there. It sounds like nobody's staying in for Thanksgiving. And when you're looking for a brine bag, I mean, is that something you can ask for with a straight face? And is the guy coming back at you like you just came straight out of the Urban Dictionary?
Well,
I bet. I tell you what. I bet dollars to donuts. Brine bag is in the Urban Dictionary. I can guess what it is, although I'm not going to get into that.
Don't we have a guest we can go to spare me this?
We do.
Ridicule.
So, yes, guys. So I'm fired up to introduce Jason Spatafora, also known as the Wolf of Weed Street. That's right.
Come on.
And also the head trader at TrueTradingGroup.com. And of course, the founder of MarijuanaStocks.com and a very big voice in the cannabis community. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving.
So hold on. Before we start, so if we grew up together, I would call you like Jay Spatz or Spatz. What did your buddies call you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sit here and be like, yeah, they call me Spatz. It was Spaz or Spaz.
I wouldn't go, no, see, I would never do that.
You can't do that
cool.
these days
no.
anyway.
Yeah, I know. It was a different time. I mean, my parents would let me ride my bike around the block at 5,
Spaz from the movie Meatballs was one of the great characters. That was Bill Murray's breakout film for people that don't remember. And remember when he was like there and like the color war and the guys were like, Spaz. Anyway. So
Jay Spatz is with us.
Yeah,
Jay Spatz is with us. Welcome, Jay Spatz. There's so much to talk about with cannabis and what's going on. And one of the things that I notice, you're a voice out there on Twitter and on the internet and within the industry of reason in the middle of the sanity. And I want to talk about that because the industry, not only are there the fundamentals around investing in cannabis, but there's the hype, there's the euphoria, there are the opportunities, there are the frauds, there's so much going on here and people are passionate about it, man. But before we do that, I think you got to explain what's going on above your head. What is that? There's a picture. It looks like the Last Supper or something. I'm a little confused.
It is the Last Supper. It's Star Wars Last Supper. I'm 40, so now I'm going through that midlife crisis, and I'm like buying toys to, I don't know.
Wait a second. Can you just, Spatz, can you just, I don't know if you can move the camera. I'm not looking to break your balls, although I'm about to. Could you just move it so I could just see the entire picture? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
So
you got some.
Look at that. You got it all going on. You got the green thing. So where's the Drew Barrymore picture? Like,
I don't have any Drew Barrymore. I have an
but she was like she starred. She was like the big breakout role in Star Wars. Remember, she got on the bicycle and she went off with that thing to the spaceship. No,
what are you talking about with the
it sounds like E.T.
Oh, that's E.T.
Yeah, I think Drew Barrymore.
Bad.
They did a TV special for Star Wars. It was awful. It was like it took place on Endor. I don't think it was Drew Barrymore, but yes, E.T. was definitely. My wife is scared to death of E.T.
All right.
Well, it took place in Endor. Is that? I mean, I'm going to go off the rails here, Tim. But when I say Endor, what do you think?
Endor.
Of course you do.
Bewitched.
And what's Endora's real name?
Her real name is Agnes Moorehead. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
One of the great actresses of our time. I mean, she was a great actress, and she finished her career as Endora on Bewitched.
Jason, if first, would you rather of the afternoon? Would you rather Jeannie in I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched in what was her
Montgomery.
name?
Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yeah.
I Dream of Jeannie.
Janie. That's fair. And why? Just, I mean, you can't just.
You know, I think it's the getup. Honestly, yep. You know, like my prepubescent self.
Whoa, man.
Are we allowed to say that?
I'm about to, Okay, understood. So Jeannie gave you something to some inspiration, maybe to get to the next phase of life.
She's a beautiful girl. That's it. That's it.
She is. And Barbara Montgomery, I believe. Is,
Elizabeth Montgomery.
Oh, Barbara Eden.
Barbara Eden, Elizabeth. Of course, then, if you remember Bewitched, it was Dick Sargent and Dick York. There were two different.
Why were there two Dicks? Why were there two Darrens?
Excuse me?
Two Darrens.
Because the first Darren had a huge back problem and he was unable to work. So they had to bring in the second Darren. So
and again, Barbara Eden guy or Barbara Feldon, AKA 99.
Yeah,
99.
Barbara Feldon, totally. Agent 99.
Totally. I mean, there was something mysterious there. All right. So Wolf, first of all, before we get into the cannabis discussion, Wolf of Weed Street. I mean, that's quite a self-proclaimed moniker. Where did that come from?
Honestly, I'd love to you know, when I first came out and I was looking at these companies, they were all penny stocks. And this is back when I had like a real job. And I was like, well, I need to be under the radar. And I stayed home one night and I saw a trailer for Wolf of Wall Street. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh, Wolf of Weed Street. I'm like the AntiJordan Belfort, you know?
I like it.
It was just about like, you know, saying exactly how I felt about a company with like no repercussions. And I was using people on Twitter as like boots on the ground to go see if it was like a PO box. I mean, I was paying people in Colorado like $100 on PayPal. I'm like, hey, go see if this is a PO box or a real company, you know?
Right. So you were there to actually be the AntiJordan Bell for really, you know, the Oakmont Stratton, which arguably has been many of the early days of cannabis in terms of the fraud that's been out there. Your goal was to actually go out there and try to turn over rocks, figure out where, you know, companies were real. And you know, my guess is you found some ugly stuff out there.
Oh, I for sure found some ugly stuff. But, you know, really, the market was going to be irrational with or without me. And, you know, in that time period, it was more about finding something that nobody had discovered that had a comparable company that just had this super hyper-inflated valuation, you know?
Yep.
And then jumping on it that way. But yeah, I mean, you know, to this day, I'm still discovering frauds, you know, just by the nature of kind of being in the business on the private side as well as the public side.
Well, I think we'll break down both sides of the market. And before we do that, Guy, when I say Oakmont Stratton, what do you think about?
Stratton Oakmont, I think of a number of different things, you know, without getting into great detail. I think of, like, of course, Stratton, you know, Russ Chairman, you know, I think of Animal House.
I think Eric Stratton. I think
going to Vermont and skiing, although I really can't ski. I mean, there's just so many things. But I think of what a farce it is that little shit, Jason Belfort, what's his name? Jordan Belfort. What's that guy's name? You know, he somehow associates himself out there in what's the name? Lake Success, Long Island with Wall Street. I mean, I would like to meet him one day because as I've said before, and I'll say here, I shit bigger than him. But we got to go to break here, Tim.
Jason, thanks for joining us today and talking about cannabis on Commercial Break, because it's a topic that we just can't seem to get enough of in the world these days.
No, I mean, you know, I'm glad to be here, especially with two musical aficionados like yourself.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about music real quick. So earlier in our smaller broadcast, you said you're 40 years old. So you're 40. So give me you can only go to one concert, band in its heyday, and don't say something that I'm going to ridicule you about, like the Star
don't tell
Wars
them what to say
thing.
then, man. You're asking.
No, I'm not telling them anything.
Honestly, I think it would have to be something like Guns N' Roses, because I think it would just be so wild.
Well done.
I mean,
yeah.
But you're talking about my heyday. If you're talking about like any concert, I mean, you know, the list is endless. But you know, like, yeah, I'd like to go to I'm not even a big fan of Guns N' Roses, or Guns N' Roses are like Bon Jovi, because like that was like the time period when I was growing up.
Yeah, and that's a great call. I saw Guns N' Roses on this last tour, and never saw them in their heyday. And seeing Axl with cornrows, and in one of those chairs when you've got like a broken knee or leg or something that you're like you're kind of rolling around in, is hardly, you know, the dude that was doing the Snake on Sweet Child of Mine, you know. So it was a little disappointing, but it's a good call. Guy, answer the same question yourself here, man.
No, it's Zeppelin. I mean, I'm going to see Zeppelin. I'm going to see Skinner. I'm going to see sort of Skinner with Stevie Gaines when he came on the scene.
Stevie Gaines or Rowdy Gaines? How about
no? So you know, Rowdy Gaines as opposed to Rowdy. What we had a whole conversation about the swimmer.
You had well, Rowdy Gaines is the swimmer. I mean, he's
and Rowdy Gaines. So it was Rowdy was the guy's name in Days of Thunder, but it wasn't Rowdy Gaines. It was, you know,
as opposed
Rowdy
to
something.
Yeah, and then as opposed to Rowdy Roddy Piper,
who wore the kilt.
Yeah, well, I mean, but he was kind of a badass. I mean, he.
Oh, here you go. I'll play with you and Jay Spatz. Dead or Alive, Rowdy Piper, and that's a good one because I got to tell you something. I don't know. I mean,
Wolf, you're up. What do you got?
Check it out. I think he's alive. I mean, he made one of the greatest scary movies of my youth, which was They Live.
Really, the Piper was on the big screen. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know the Iron Sheik is alive because he follows me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you were all fired up about that.
It's crazy.
I love it.
Tim got all excited. Tim came in one day, was all fired up. He's like, the Iron Sheik follows me. I'm like, yeah, he followed me about 7 months.
So all right. So let's dive into cannabis. There's a lot of misperceptions out there, but before we dive into cannabis one more time, I mean, you know, we talk about the Wolf of Weed Street, Jordan Belfort. And there's multiple movies that have been either built around this. There's obviously Leo DiCaprio, who I've got as big of a man crush on Leo as I can have on any dude.
Huge.
You know, so love Leo. So Wolf of Wall Street, but maybe one of the great movies of all time with a star-studded cast is the movie Boiler Room.
100%.
Where the featured firm that's supposed to be Stratton Oakmont is named J.T. Marlin, which is so good, man. I mean, talk about it sounds exactly what it was, which was a total ripoff of obviously J.P. Morgan or some Wall Street powerhouse, and it's kind of what was going on there. But folks, go watch I guess it's the opening scene, more or less. It's the scene at least where Giovanni Ribisi, whatever his name, what's his last name?
Yeah. Ribisi or Ribeye.
Ribisi.
Well, Ribisi. So Spatafora knows it. It's Ribisi. So he's sitting there at his first meeting at Stratton Oakmont. Ben Affleck walks in. And the next 5 minutes of the speech is some of the greatest shit you're ever going to hear, including he pushes some guys at the head of the table. Hey, pal, you're in my seat. And some other guy is trying to brown nose up to Ben, says, yeah, idiot, get out of his seat. And he says right away to that guy, like, get the fuck out of here. Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. Get out of my fine Italian leather chair and just keep moving, Schleprock. And then he says a couple other like amazing things.
Can I tell you, that is Ben Affleck at his absolute best. He's in that movie for all 4 minutes and he crushes. It's like Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. It's the same type of thing.
He throws his Ferrari keys on the table. He's like, I got a sick house on the North Fork.
Yeah, you know? yeah. He's like, who says money can't buy you happiness? Look at my fucking smile.
Ear to ear, baby.
Ear to ear, baby.
Ear to ear. And by the way, Jason, anytime, you know, some dude comes in or, you know, somebody who looks like Tim and I always say that dude works at Marlin. And it's always, for some reason, it always cracks me up. I mean, it is just one of those things I can't stop laughing.
You know, just like just like in the cannabis world, but obviously back to the roots of these perpetrators. I mean, Wall Street's had a lot of bad actors over the years, and so we largely look. CNBC is make sure that these people don't come on air, but there's invariably, Guy and I will look at each other and say, could be Marlin territory. So Jason, give me the setup for Cannabis as you saw it and what got you involved in the industry.
Honestly, it was really simple. I was looking, I had gotten to the point where I was like, I need to start investing, and my whole strategy was, okay, well, what's the world going to need in 10 years? And this was spring of 2013. And, I'm home over the summer one day, and now I'm like going through it, and it's August, and I see Eric Holder, and it was August 15th. I still remember the date.
Right.
Start talking about how the DOJ is going to, lay off states that have cannabis legislation on the books. And he goes by like point by point by point. And I was like, I'm like, are pot stocks a thing? And I go to Google, and it brings me to this really junky website called marijuanastocks.com. And
hold on, didn't you tell us that this is your site?
I bought it a year later.
Okay, here we go.
So perfect symmetry. And so I buy this thing, and it's like, oh, payment processing company. I didn't know it. I was like, how do you buy a penny stock, right? So I buy like 10,000 shares at like 5 cents. And then 2 days later, it goes up like 50%. And I was like, what the hell is going on?
Right. I'm pretty good at
this. Amazing. This is I was like, the stock market is easy. 2 days after that, it tanks 50%. And I was like, what the hell happened?
Right.
So I was like, I was really hooked there. And then I was like, okay, maybe I just need to take my approach. And then little by little, I started to get into the industry from like, how everybody comes in, picks and shovels. And I was just kind of smart enough to realize that these weren't normal gains. And then like Colorado went legal. At this time, I was like, I really need to, get into this. I created the Wolf of Weed Street Twitter handle where I could say whatever I want. Then it just kind of got crazy. And it was just, the only thing that I had read trading was Markets, Mobs, and Mayhem by Bob Mentor.
Yep.
Who, longer story. And it was just perfect for the
applying these theories to cannabis.
And even today, like it's still the book that I looked at in Animal Spirits. And I'm like, this is the only thing you need to read for going through this pandemic and going through like the marijuana sector.
It's interesting because look, there are times it feels like the community investing in cannabis, at least in some of the faster moving stocks, are a mob, and the community on the internet around the hype, and this gets to your AntiJordan Belfort persona. And also really what, I've tried to do since I've been investing in the space, and because, I've got a voice in the space and is pointing out, look, the dynamics on the macro story and the setup for cannabis are extraordinary. This is yes, it's post-prohibition. Yes, it's a generational opportunity to invest post-prohibition. Yes, this is a very to be sophisticated industry that's just another consumer product that's going to go through all of the evolution, that whether it's Cheerios or whether it's stinky flour from Humboldt County, it's all going to go through some of the same sophisticated distribution, procurement, logistics, big data, DTC, digital, the whole phase of what makes any consumer product successful, and the companies that really do this. So, but investing in this sector has been painful. And what give me your assessment of what really the hazards have been, and give us your assessment of where it is today, because there's a lot of people that want to put money into this sector and rightfully are cautious.
I think it was understanding, so we've had 3 cycles really, or two if you want to look at them. So we had 2014 when the US went legal, and that bull market lasted basically from January of 2014 to April of 2014. And it imploded in, in just epic fashion. And it didn't really come back till, the elections of 2016. And then at this point, Canada was talking about, going legal for medical. And we knew that Trudeau wanted, legal for, recreational. And, so we saw this shift from the US companies that were nowhere near getting, their stuff together. And then these Canadian companies that all of a sudden were big operators. And, and then in this time period, it's like an arms race between them. And people are just throwing money at them left and right. And as investors, we were really excited because, we were just kind of looking at everything. And I look back at this now and I'm like, man, we were really staring at this market in a vacuum. Like, okay, I've got 1 million square feet. I'm going to grow 1 million square feet of cannabis and then sell it,
Right.
And then
right.
realizing that it's not that easy. And,
So you're bringing up an interesting point. It sounds like you're talking about a point where, as it started out for you, it was the concept of listening to Eric Holder and listening in 2013 about the opportunity that was ultimately going to be there in the States, for people that aren't dedicated or deep into the cannabis industry. There's a handful of big legislative moments, including the Cole memo, which essentially was the message that the federal government was going to leave the states alone to do what they need to do, and if they wanted to legalize and go through their own process, the feds were largely going to stay out of their way as long as it didn't cross into federal jurisdiction. So I want to bring it back though, Wolf, because you have a case here where you started out getting excited about the U.S., but then suddenly it looked like the U.S. was reasonably far away from execution, but that north of the border, this market was really starting to take off, and you were starting to find investment opportunities in some of those early stage companies. And I mean, those are the companies that later turned into Canopy Growth, but a Metrum Health. Some of these early stage investments that were, by the way, home run investments for people that were able to see some of the earlier players in the industry. There's this whole thing about investing in Canada versus the US. Help me break this down for people as you see it, and why it doesn't have to be right or wrong one place or the other, but that the opportunities are different. And people really need to understand what they're investing in.
Yeah, I mean, when people come to me, even now and ask me about investing, it's always kind of, hey, should I buy this Aurora? My financial advisor says I should buy Aurora, and I'm always like, my head explodes. I look at, and you were talking about this, I believe it was yesterday. I look at Canada as a trade. I think that they've got too many issues with their government. They don't have enough dispensaries. Like here in the United States, we follow, for every 10,000 people, 1 dispensary. Canada is so far behind on that, and they've taken all of this cheap money that turned out to not be so cheap. They haven't had a real place to sell the product in. They made huge investments in Europe. And on top of that, it's just a mess, right? Yeah. Whereas, yeah. And I look at it as in a simple way. It's an addressable market. We've got 10 times the population. We also have the catalysts, right? And look, if I'm a purist, right? I care. I want to buy something for $1 and sell it at $2. I don't want to overcomplicate things. And I knew what drove the market beforehand, which was, getting medical pass, then recreational, which was C45. And then at that point, it becomes an execution story. And the Canadians did not execute at all. In the United States, we've had to play by different rules, by the nature of our banking, by the nature of paying taxes. So they had to be fiscally conservative. They couldn't have an arms race, like Curaleaf couldn't have an arms race with Trulieve just to keep something out of its hand. And they were just like, oh, we'll pay 50% more. Yeah,
you're talking about a case where U.S. operators have been forced to have both business and balance sheet rationalization. Not all of them have, but unlike, whereas in Canada, it seemed like the early stage was growth at any cost. These were companies that were able to raise capital in a traditional stock market, both in Canada and then later in the US, which gave them all kinds of ammunition to, frankly, not be terribly rational when it came to their investments. Guy, jump in here, because, we talk about this on Fast Money. We talk about investing in cannabis. And I think to the extent that, you've got questions about the industry, I think you're representative of what a lot of the broader investor community kind of thinks about, as opposed to guys that have been doing this for a long time.
So my first question, I'll let you and Tim talk about my first question. Jay, where'd you grow up?
I'm from Brooklyn originally.
Right on. Okay, so you're either a Yankee fan or a Met fan. So
don't
tell me both.
I'm a Yankee fan.
Man, you're a Yankee fan. So let me ask you a question. Here's my question to you. Is playing for the Mets and playing in New York the same thing?
You got to do this. You do this every single.
I'm just curious. I just want to know what Jay Spatz thinks about
that. All right. If I'm a ball player, I want to. I don't want to play for the Mets. I hate the colors. I want to be a Yankee. I mean,
he hates the colors.
I went to my first Yankee game when I was 3. I could never go to a Mets game.
Dude, first of all, hold on.
No, what? I didn't prompt him. He answered it.
Look, my last name's Spatafora. By default, I have to be a Yankees fan.
So actually, I think there's a little more paisan rooting for the Mets.
No,
and you're also a Florida boy.
That's patently false.
You're a Florida boy, and you're ragging on the colors of the Mets. I mean, look, the best football team in Florida is not the Jacksonville Jags; it's the Florida Gators. And what colors do they have, man? Come on, man. I mean, go Gators, by the way. Go Gators.
But my wife's a Gator. My father-in-law's a Gator. My mother-in-law's a Gator.
Right on. So you've got good taste.
I'm an Arizona Wildcat. I mean, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to win. Look, I can't win, right?
But you just did win because you pointed out the fact that playing for the Mets is, you might as well be playing in Wichita. I mean, it's not playing in New York. And I will tell you, as much as these Met fans are like tripping over themselves because Stevie Cohen is the owner, and magically they're going to be, the big red machine. People don't want to play for them. I'm telling you, they don't want to play in that shithole. And with the apple coming out of center field.
Ask me to give you the starting lineup for the Big Red Machine, the 75 Big Red Machine.
Go ahead, do your thing.
All right, Johnny Bench behind the dish.
Sure.
First base. You've got
Tony Perez.
Tony Perez, whose son Eduardo went on to a pretty good major league career. Now does great work on ESPN. Second base, Joe Morgan. Sadly, we lost in the last couple months. Shortstop, Davey Concepcion. At third base,
That's a tough one.
Hold on. No, it's not. It's not that tough. It's Pete Rose, dude, who played the hot corner for the Reds before he went
for a little bit. He was all over the place. Yeah.
Okay. In my outfield, my center fielder, how do you forget this name? Cesar Geronimo.
Sure. And I think Dan Dreesen was on that team too.
I think Danny Dreesen might have been, I'm guessing he was one of the first guys in for a late game defensive replacement at first base. But my outfielders, I'm flanked by George Foster, who might have been the worst Met sign of all times in right field, and a Ken Griffey Sr. in left field. So that's pretty good, right?
I can name 2 Mets: Darryl Strawberry and was it Gary Carter?
There you
Gary
go.
Gary Carter wasn't a Met. Gary Carter was an Expo.
Oh, stop it.
He played for the Mets for 9 weeks, and the Met fans like, oh, the kid, he's the greatest of all time. It's such. I mean,
dude.
The Mets. The Mets can rest their laurels on one player that they unceremoniously traded to the aforementioned Cincinnati Reds.
Tom Seaver.
That's it. That's the Mets. That's it. History of the Mets, Tom Seaver. Next question.
I'm not going to agree to that at all. And as you know, the best pitcher in baseball pitches in Flushing, and he has for the last 3 years. And you know that. And that's okay. That's okay. But we're here to talk about the colors.
But I'm glad. Listen, I'm glad we aired that out because I wanted to know what Spatz thought about these things, and he. Now I'm a Spatz guy.
All right.
There you go.
So Spatz, give us your assessment of investing in cannabis, both at the end of 2020 when we've had a big election run up, and you've also had a story in the United States, and this is where people are very passionate here in this country, but as investors, and they should be, that investing in the U.S. names is really the biggest opportunity. So why waste your time north of the border? And there's a lot of criticism about what's portrayed out there in the market, including on CNBC. And I have to say, I'm doing my best here, folks. But the investable opportunities that are listed on NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange are not many. It doesn't mean that you can't talk about these other companies, and we do. But I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, Wolf. So talk to me about where you think the investment is now. It's been a big run. Is it the wrong time to allocate $1 to cannabis?
Look, I think that if you're going to come in, if you're watching this for the first time, and you're learning about, the Mets and the Yankees and everything, I think you got to go in slow. Okay. I think you gotta, tier into your positions. Like one of the things that I think cannabis investors get wrong is they say, oh, I'm buying this. This is a long-term hold. I'm going to hold it for 5 years. I think that you've got to be active, in the space. So, like hold a core, trade a core, which a lot of times that doesn't work for people because, they want long-term capital gains. My position is, fix your position, put as much space from that original entry, and use the volatility to pay yourself, throughout the course of a year. So stay long when you need to.
You're almost throwing a little bit of an option strategy out there, which is at least let the volatility be your friend. Don't buy and fall asleep. Look, there are companies, you don't have to have been that closely focused on this industry and sector for the last 3 or 4 years to have noticed, and they probably popped up on a fancy avenue near you, a company like MedMen, who was a big fanfare, a lot of splash, a lot of arrogance, this and that, could possibly have been one of the worst equity investments you'd ever made in your life, even though some of those stores are still operating and full, and some of them aren't bad assets. But it was a company that was not run well. And it was a company that had a very poor capital structure. And it was a company that, just as you were investing, there was at price of X, there was a dilutive share issuance at X minus 20%, and or as certain parts of the operation were either being hived off or just frankly poorly run, capital being wasted. So the point is that there are some companies that actually are examples of the concept works. Look, high-end Saks Fifth Avenue, Rodeo Drive boutique selling high-priced cannabis products to tourists and people that have a lot of money to spend, who are no different than people that don't have a lot of money to spend and also want to buy cannabis products. But yes, I mean, that's a concept that works and will work, and especially speaks to the branding and the positioning and the margin orientation of products, but it's not necessarily what makes a company successful.
Well, I think you kind of touched on something without even saying it, right? A company like MedMen, whose CEO is Adam Biermann. Well, he used to be Adam Biermann.
Right.
If people want to know why he got the boot, I suggest you Google his name and my name.
What do you got there? Hold on. What's that mean?
Well, when he was going public, all right, so this is some dirt. I don't think I've ever shared this really anywhere. Definitely not publicly. So I met Adam at a conference back in 2015 or 2016. And I said, and if you know me, I'm not somebody that goes out of my way to like kiss somebody's ass at all. So I went and I was like, hey, nice to meet you. I was like, I'm Jason Spatafora, like kind of timidly, which is, tough for me.
Not like you, apparently. Not like you.
Okay. Not like me at all. And I was like, I'm like, I own marijuanastocks.com. I'm like, I know one day you're going to go public, let's keep in touch. And, because, I just saw what everybody else saw.
Yep.
And I was like, can I have a business card? And he's like, I don't have a business card. So, okay. So I went, I'm talking to somebody and he's like 10 yards away and I see him and he goes and gives a business card to somebody. And I was like,
interesting.
Wait till you go public. So when they were going public, you know, I knew a bunch of people, like, you know, we know some mutual people within the sector, and they were like, oh, MedMen's going public. You got to go through their deck and everything. Like, they threw in all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I went out of my way, because usually I won't say anything, and I'm just like, stay away from this thing. It, you know, like the structure, the pay compensation, everything. And I never let on. I mean, I never took my foot off this thing's throat. And then it got to the point where a private company that I was investing with was a vendor of MedMen. And they were like, hey, they're doing all of this stuff. They're trying to give us like 50 cents on the dollar, and they're showing me emails and invoices. So I was like, why don't you guys pay your bills? And I started saying it like very publicly. And they denied. And then they were like, well, we're going to sue you. And I was like, sue me. I was like, I'm not scared of you. I'm like, you're not going to scare me. I'm not some some goon on Twitter. I'm like, I got the receipts. And they denied it until like, I just kept on, I was just walking them into traps. And then he eventually just had to resign.
Wow.
But but to the point, like, you've got people in this space that want to be a face, right? Like, so Adam Biermann wanted to be a face in this sector. Oh, I'm the CEO of a cannabis company. Look at me. Then you've got people like Kim Rivers from Trulieve that's like, no, I want to be an operator. I understand the opportunity that is presented to me right now, and I don't want to mess it up. So in 2014, we saw a lot of short money, as the rappers say, and now we're seeing a lot of long money. And really, that's how, as a new investor, that's the approach you have to take, and you've got to go to value and like fundamentals and cap structure, and you've got to learn about all this stuff. You have to learn about, okay, what the difference is from a recreational market and a medical market, understand what happens when you have changeovers. Like, what happens to Trulieve, who dominates the state of Florida, which is a huge tourist state? What happens when they have recreational cannabis? What happens to all of these operators when they're not paying taxes under 280E? And they're just getting banged out, like, by paying taxes that a normal business doesn't have to pay. And these are all things that are they're going to make the difference. And until that happens, you stay active. You put as much space between yourself and your original entries, because, as fast as these things go up, we also have some of the most irrational investors that get scared, and, they've got a lot of fears and PTSD from what happened in March of 2019 with the Canadian companies.
Yep. No, there's no question that there's a lot of scorched earth there, and you're raising the issue of active management in a sector that's always on the move, which is one of the lines I say as it relates to the ETF world. And I think the other dynamic you're talking about is, yesterday's and even today's markets and underlying legislation and operating environments are going to change. So a company like Trulieve, who's been arguably the most profitable company in cannabis for a long time, has built a huge lead in the state of Florida, is very well run by Kim Rivers and co, has to be planning for life where Florida moves from a medical market to an adult market. It's clearly it's a top 3 state in the country right now in terms of the opportunity there. And I think the best management teams in the business are doing that. Guy, we got to get out of here, but
I got one more question. I love the fact that Biermann he tried to big time Spatz, and Spatz got in his kitchen. That's fantastic.
He showed him a little Flatbush, man.
So my last question, and because I'm always curious about these things, because I have my favorites in my movies, but who's your favorite in that Star Wars? Was it Hope Solo or Gryffindor or Dumbledore? Which one did you like the best?
You're messing with me, man. It had to be Luke Skywalker. I mean, who?
Yeah, Luke. No, how can I forget
Guy,
Luke?
I don't know if you know, my son's middle name is Skywalker.
Did you know that?
Dude, come on. Please tell me you're kidding.
Dude, the Wolf confided in me a family tale here that I totally respect as a guy that went through a difficult process with my wife naming my kids. Talk about this one, Wolf.
There's a funny caveat to it. So Guy, before we go, I said, let's name the kid Danger. Let's have that as his middle name. I was looking for fun names, and then I was getting on the Star Wars kick. And my wife's like, if you want a Star Wars name, Mark Hamill has to approve it. So I was like,
come on.
I swear to God, hand on a Bible. And so I used my daughter as a means to get to Mark Hamill because she's very cute. And so it worked. So now here's the issue. My son's name's Alexander. My last name is Spatafora. So Skywalker would be S, would be his initials. And I was like, I'm fine with his initials being S. I go, that'll be a great icebreaker in college. My wife,
good point.
Can't be S. So what we had to do was break up his middle name. So he has two middle names. It's Sky and Walker. So Alexander,
that's
Sky Walker.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, somewhere Kenny Walker, who the Knicks drafted 7th, I think, in the draft, which another disastrous Knicks draft, is smiling because, when I think of Skywalker, it ain't Luke, it's Kenny. But anyway, listen, I know Tim's going to close this out. Thanks for joining us, Spatz.
I'm going to close it out. I'm going to tell you that Luke Voigt peaked in 2020, Yankee fans, and that Kenny Walker was, I think, the number 5 overall pick in that draft. In the same draft, I think it was Jordan's draft. I could be wrong on this. Might go down in history it's certainly a top 5 worst drafts of all time by the New York Knickerbockers. But
right up there with Frederick Weiss.
Frederick Weiss. You gotta put the V in there. Wolf, this has been a lot of fun, and keep fighting the fight out there because cannabis is a great investment, but there's a lot of people that are not either doing the work or frankly there's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing out there, and you're not one of them. So thanks for joining us. I've never seen a Star Wars episode in its entirety. Don't hold that against me, but thanks, man. Good to have you today.
Happy holidays, guys. It's good to finally chat with you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Jason.
Later, guys.
See you later.